She literally has said on more than one occasion about Dr. Sleep, I love that movie. She never says that about these type of movies.
I'm just gonna say, like, we're recording this on a Thursday, not our normal Wednesday, because the only chance I put off going to see this movie, for no other reason, and this is weird, I just didn't feel like going to the movies, and so I put it off. And Monday was the last chance that I would have had, because I had plans on Tuesday if we were going to record on Wednesday. And I called Dave and said, hey, can we just kick the can on recording a day so I can watch the movie on Wednesday? And he did. And I still, yesterday, I was like, oh, I don't want to go to this. I don't want to go see this movie.
I never do anything. I understand that feeling completely.
Yeah. And so I like literally drug myself to the theater and got the ticket. And like, I got to put because we had the bucket and the cup.
Oh, yeah, the refillable thing?
The refillable thing. And so I was like, and I got to piss, which means I got to go to the concession stand and ask them if they can hold the bucket and cup, because I'm not taking that into that filthy ass bathroom. And then I go into the bathroom, and then I got to get back in line and get my bucket and cup and have it filled up. And yeah, but I sit down, and then we're assigned seats, right? Because they converted over to assigned seats. And my favorite position in the theater is pretty much the back right. I like to be looking to my left to the screen, right? Like slightly, just ever so slightly. And there were two people in the back row. So I went to the next row and I picked one seat in. Now, these aren't like benches or anything. They're individual seats. So I picked one seat in, so that way I wouldn't have anybody want to sit next to me. Well, right before the movie starts, this guy comes walking in and sits down, not right next to me, but there was one seat in between us. Like he picked
that's
seat.
Weird.
Like, weird, right?
Yeah.
And he definitely did not. I didn't pick my seat with knowing his was there.
Yeah.
Right? Like he picked mine. Like he picked after I had picked mine. And so he kind of sat next to me, but it was fine because like we laughed at all the same things and like gasped at all the same things, like the references, I mean. And my energy level and attitude was a complete 180 by the end of that movie. Like,
awesome.
Like I sat through the credits, like, please let there be some scene, like something more. Like, it was so good. It was like, I was like, how would you sum this up? And it might not necessarily be like the best Stephen King movie, but it's one of the best Stephen King adaptations. Like,
that's fair. I haven't read the book in a while. It was actually probably the second Stephen King book that I listened to, I guess. So, I think The Shining was first. Though I couldn't swear to you that it wasn't Dr. Sleep then The Shining for me. Because I knew The Shining movie. And I think it was like 2013 when it came out. I'm really not sure which was first. But so it's been that long. So it's like before I started to do the chronology. And so I didn't remember a ton about it. And so the whole thing with like the people in the caravans and the steam, like I had forgotten all of that. And I just sort of remembered that it was Danny Torrance grown up, and I didn't remember. I mean, I remembered liking it because it was like after that I was like, well, I think after that I did On Writing, and then I ended up going back to Carrie. But yeah, and so I was like encouraged by the trailer. Like I was encouraged by like that the way that it seemed this like direct sequel to The Shining and had those recreations. I also am realizing like I actively like Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
I maybe have a crush on him. If he has a beard, forget about it.
He absolutely blew me away in this movie. Like he had this like blue collar everyday man like talk, and I don't know. he just sold it.
Yeah.
Totally sold it. Like
I liked him so much. Like even as this like profoundly like he starts as this really flawed character, but I don't know. I was just on board for it. But going in, the bride was we were like shopping and stuff throughout the day ahead of time, and the cashier at the grocery store was like, "What are you guys gonna do?" We're like, she's like, "We're going to the movies," and they're like, "What are you gonna see?" And she's like, "Doctor Sleep," and then the cashier is like, "Oh, you want to hang out with me here instead?" And she's like, "I know." so she was not excited about it. Needless to like by that. But like she came out of it and she's like, I loved that. And I heard her talking to her dad later, and that's how they talk. Like when we were talking about the podcasting when you were out here, that's how they talk about everything. That's their shorthand is like dum-dums and this, that, or the other. They say terribly nice things about you, not to your face kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if you're present, you're going to be spoken of kind of with a joking attitude. So she was like, but she told him, she's like, I was going into it like being a brat about the whole thing. But she's like, I loved it, Dad. So I think part of what it is, part of why she loved it is because it was written and like adapted and directed by the guy who did Haunting of Hill House from Netflix, which she adores.
And he did Gerald's Game also.
Oh shit! Okay,
he directed that.
Oh,
as
I think
well,
he might be.
Which is,
I'm gonna say he's married to Carla, who started.
Oh yeah,
that, maybe.
I know. What
no,
about.
He's not. He's married to this lady who looks exactly like a young Angelina Jolie, who's in Haunting of Hill House. That's what it is. But yeah, I'll get his name here in a second.
So there's a lot of similar, like, and after knowing that really made sense. And the Haunting of Hill House, like, I know that has a great reputation, and so it does not surprise me that this was so good. But I really feel like it did the impossible, where it was a sequel to both the book and the movie, which are both drastically different from each other. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
it does a great job of really being a sequel to both of them. All the changes that they made from the book, like there were things in there that I was like, I can't believe they put this in this movie. Like I was like, how are they going to explain steam and the process of harvesting steam, and like how there's so much exposition that goes on in the book to get that point across. They nailed it. And then
it's like stealing people's shine, basically, right?
What's that?
It's kind of like stealing their shine, like
yeah, which is this. It's the same. They're psychic vampires, essentially.
Yeah,
like they're feeding on that emotion and that psychic energy, just like Pennywise does. Honestly,
right? Yeah, because it gets stronger when there's fear involved.
Yep.
Fuck that scene where they kill that kid around the RV.
I can't believe
so
that they
horrible.
put that got put in a movie.
Yeah, it was upsetting.
Yeah.
I heard that I maybe it was on, I don't know where I heard this or saw it, but I guess the kid who played that character, like he just like did what we saw, and what's so affecting. And then I guess just like hopped up after the take and waltzed off, and everyone else was like all disturbed, and like all the other actors were like, fuck, what just happened? The kid's like, where's craft services?
Oh, shit.
But that is a really upsetting scene. I know
Absolutely.
It's intentionally so, but yeah, it was. It all kind of came back to me like what the events were, but the way that they unfolded was surprisingly effective. Like it could have been way more cheesy. Like at time, like when Rose the Hat was like hovering over the whole everything. That was like a little cheesy, but she was. So
I thought
hot,
that was a great representation, though, of like what she was capable of.
Yes, and all of that stuff that they did, like in the mind palaces or whatever, like was it was just like wildly well done. Mike Flanagan is the guy's name that I couldn't remember.
Mike Flanagan, the director. I'm trying to see who plays Rose the Hat. Rebecca
Ferguson. Oh, I looked her up immediately. I was more than charmed by her in this. I was like, who is that lady? What else can I see her in?
Yep.
She was very alluring, just perfectly cast.
Yep. She absolutely did a great job The little girl did a great job. Yeah, I agree with you. Stephen King is notorious for hating Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining, which a lot of people love.
Oh yeah,
me being one of them, you being one of them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I also, though, am a huge fan of the book, and I appreciate Stephen King's perspective. I think is summed up essentially like Jack Nicholson kind of played Jack Torrance as being crazy from the first frame.
Right. Yeah. I just rewatched it, and that was very pronounced to me this time around.
Yeah.
Like everything. Like he's in the car, like driving there with the family, and he's just like, I don't know. He's like up to 11. Like I can't remember what it is. It's like it's something really innocuous about just driving.
He wants to drink the whole time. I think
there's that too.
I think he constantly wants a drink, and that's how he's playing it, but it comes off as him being crazy.
Yeah. It's weird. Like it's like Wendy says something to him, like, we got to get there. It's gonna be we're not even like freaking out like she does later. She's like, oh, we should get. I don't know. It's not this at all. I'm just trying to think of anything that she says that he parrots back, or she's like, oh, we're gonna get there soon, Danny, before it gets dark. And he's just driving. He's like, we're gonna get there soon, Danny, before it gets dark. I'm just like, what in the fuck are you even doing? But so I also watched. There's a documentary, a 35-minute documentary that Vivian Kubrick made, his daughter, like while they were doing this, shooting this for a year. So there's some cool stuff in there. And there's this interview with Jack Nicholson. He's not really talking about this topic directly, not in the same context we are, but he's talking about this thing about naturalistic acting. And he's like, you go through this thing where you're trying to make it really real. He's like, the people just haven't really seen it real enough. And then you end up working with someone like Stanley who says like, yeah, it's real, but it's not interesting. And so when he said that, I started to think, oh, I think that's probably just like what they're going for. And I watched it. It was like, it's such a cool movie, and he is fun and interesting to watch, but it is so over the top. It's like, I could easily imagine everything he was doing in a stage production without it being changed at all. Like he wouldn't have to project, like he could just do what he was doing and it would read the same way. So I understand. I guess I took that point to heart more than I had in the past, because my thought had always been I didn't know enough about the nuances of the book to separate it from the film, because I think I watched, because that's what I think. I can't remember if I watched or like read Dr. Sleep, then like watched The Shining, and then read the Shining book or whatever it was. I can't remember that order, but it was all mixed together. And I remember knowing that criticism at that time, and this is like 5 or 6 years ago, whatever. And it was like, I don't know. It's like, it felt the same to me. It's like, I know it doesn't end the same way with the boiler, but I guess that's one of the other big points too, is that for him, it's supposed to be about Jack Torrance falling apart, succumbing, trying to fight to maintain his sort of soul and all of that. And then also the boiler as this perfect metaphor for having to keep from like exploding, I guess, or like, so to have that missing with the snow metaphor or whatever instead, he didn't like. So what's sort of interesting here, in light of how we're talking about them together,
but then that's how Dr. Sleep ends. They bring the boiler thing back.
Yeah,
because in the Dr. Sleep book, they go back to the ruins of the Overlook Hotel, and it's essentially just an overlook at that point. Like it's like a highway pull off, you know,
which I didn't remember. The bride was reading that for me in trivia, but before she started reading the trivia, I was like, that's everything I remember about the book. I was like, but I don't have a strong, like, it would, but I said that thing. It's like, it seems like this sequel to both that movie and the Shining book, just like we're talking about. But I was saying, it's like, I can't remember for sure. It was like, I could see it not having ended in the Overlook, or maybe it did. I can't remember. She's like, how could you not remember? I was like, I don't know. I just don't. But then she read the thing, which was what you just told me. I was like, yeah, I guess I don't remember that.
it was all smart choices. Again, I was talking to Ash. I was like, I really think that these great adaptations are made by these fans of Stephen King who like his early adaptations and the ones that started to really be bad were trying to put what he wrote verbatim on a movie. That just doesn't work that way. He doesn't write. He writes for internal monologues, right? Like internal dialogue in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just like that. I feel like a lot of his writing, there's so much exposition and so much extra in it. Like it's just like this, it's perfect. That's why they fit so well for audiobooks, because it's like they just have this internal dialogue to them.
Yeah, you get a lot about what people are feeling and this sort of backstory about why they feel that way and all kinds of stuff.
And they're written like what your voice in your head would sound like. Like
talking to themselves, like kind of.
Like a thought, right? Like And so,
I like that. They read like a thought.
Yeah. But this new batch of directors who have been lifelong fans of Stephen King are really good at synthesizing his essence from the book, but making good movies. You know what I mean? Like, they also have the talent of making good film. And so then they put those two things together and you get these super intelligent choices that even when you're reading the book, this idea of, because in the book, she doesn't go find him. Like, he arranges via the chalkboard their first meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And goes to her town and she skips school. And all of this, I'm reading this and I'm like, this would never happen in real life. Like, there's no, there's no fucking way any of this would be happening in real life. And so in the movie, they acknowledge that by having her seek him out, and she just shows up one day in his life. And that is perfect. Like, it just makes so much more sense and really helps support the strength and independence of her character and what she's capable of.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, before, I don't want to get into every story beat, but there is a single sentence that I think just contextualize this for anyone who might not have known. So it's like, years following, this is it from IMDb, years following the events of The Shining, now adult Dan Torrance, who is the kid in The Shining, must protect a young girl with similar powers from a cult known as the True Knot, who prey on children with powers to remain immortal. So the girl we're talking about is the one that Abra, who has like off the charts, like abilities like Danny does or did.
Yep. And this group of people who travel around, they're gypsies essentially. And in the book, through that exposition, you find out they allude to it a little bit in the movie, but they have been going for centuries or millennia, essentially.
Yeah.
Feeding on these people who shine and collecting this steam that is released as these people are tortured. And they're kept in these modified thermoses, and that it's the only way they can continue to survive. But as long as they keep doing it, they'll age super slow. They're kind of immortal. They're not human. I love how when Snakebite Andy, they all have these cool names. Snakebite Andy and Rose the Hat and
Barry the Chunk.
Barry the Chunk and Grandpa Flip and Crow Daddy.
Yeah.
And all these great names. Anyways, Snakebite Andy asked Rose the Hat, she's like, are we, because Snakebite Andy has, so that there's two options when they find somebody with psychic powers. Well, I guess there's not two if they're a kid. If they're a kid, they're going to harvest them and get their steam. But after they get to a certain point, she explains it in the movie that becoming an adult really, like, it taints the steam. It makes the steam like not good and not something that will satiate what they need to survive.
Yeah. It's almost like they're food. They're like hungry and withering away, dying if they don't get this steam.
Yeah, literal vampires. But she asks, Snakebite Andy asks her, she's like, are we still human? And Rose just looks at her and she's like, does it matter? You know, like, and you're just like, oh, that's such a great answer. But yeah, I really feel when I read Doctor Sleep, I had read The Shining right before that.
Oh, cool. You did this like last year, right? Or
Yeah,
something like recently.
And I really feel like, I know I've said this on the episodes before, but I really think the movie nailed it. The Shining is about trying to deal with life while being a drunk. And Doctor Sleep is about dealing with life being a sober drunk. Like it deals with sobriety.
And recovery or whatever.
Yeah,
that looks like.
And the movie does such a better job of like hammering that home. Like his speech when he gets his 8-year pin.
Yeah.
And he's like, my dad would want to stand here. He wanted to be here, and I get to, and like, he's this character which Ewan McGregor plays so well. That's super intelligent and super powerful, has this super powerful psychic ability, but really is soft spoken and not, has done bad things. He spent some time as an alcoholic and then finds this town. He takes the bus as high as it'll go, like to the end of the line, basically.
Yeah.
Just because he doesn't have anywhere else to go. And just by happenstance finds a nice man who takes a chance on him.
Billy Freeman.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't know why it's getting me now. It hit me like sometimes these things do, where I just like teared up. Like there wasn't even something he said, but it was something where you were getting from the character of Billy Freeman. He's like, I know this look. And he basically just like encounters Danny on the street.
Yep.
And offers him essentially a place to stay and a job working at this like tiny town thing that they're building. He just kind of gives him this chance. And I don't know, just like I don't know if it's just the kindness of it. I don't know why that whole gesture in that scene where they just shake hands and they don't even say much. That really I started to cry. I'm almost crying thinking about it.
The next scene is like him paying his first 2 weeks rent and like, oh man, just
so
like
sweet. I don't know.
And he goes down that night. He's like, I'm downstairs on the first floor if you ever need anything. And he goes that night. He's like,
he says, I need help.
Yeah. And he's like, you said, my look. What did you mean by that? And he's like, just suffering and struggling. And he's like, yeah, I think I need help. He's like, all right, come on in. Let's talk about it. Yeah. And that's his response to it. Like,
I don't know why that really like gets me. But yeah, it was just so moving. I think that's part of it. It's like this movie has genuine heart and in intrigue and style and all that stuff too. It's not just hollow.
It's talk about heart. The whole point, like the whole Dr. Sleep thing comes, he ends up getting a job as an orderly in a hospice center.
Yeah.
And the cat who is also at the hospice center has this ability that cat goes and sleeps with the person if they're going to die that night.
Yeah.
And he uses that. God, the first
I was just thinking about that first guy. Like you basically sit with him and he knows he's going to die and he's scared and he's emotional. Oh,
yep. And Dan to help ease him goes into his mind and helps him remember a pleasant memory. And it helps ease him into the next plane, because Danny Torrance has firsthand evidence that there is something after this life because he keeps getting visited by
Oh, that's right. The people from the Overlook, the ghosts from the Overlook.
Because they're so hungry. And man, this movie did such a great job of explaining all that stuff with his exposition and like Dick Halloran, who gets killed in the movie, but not in the book.
Yeah.
They don't even touch on that. They don't even allude to it, but he keeps showing up.
Yeah, they handled it the same way. Like the bad ghosts show up to him. Dick Halloran. So I think in the book probably he was still alive, and they would meet. But in the movie,
coming back as a ghost. In the movie, he's coming back as a ghost to help Danny learn how to deal with his powers, and he teaches him how to trap these ghosts essentially in his mind. And that's another great question that has a great answer in this movie, where he asked Dick Halloran, he's like, what happens to them inside those boxes? And Dick Halloran just looks at him and he's like, do you care?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
but he explains how these ghosts, because the Overlook was essentially expunged of all of that and left to go derelict, because Danny had so much power, they literally are drawn to him to try to pull some of this psychic energy. So you have ghosts that are eating psychic energy. The Overlook is, you find out, is also this like drain on the energy. And I like how they finally give the Overlook like its own presence. Like that's what's possessing Jack Torrance. That's what's possessing Danny Torrance, is this, is the Overlook itself, you know? And because the book says that in name, but I felt like Stanley Kubrick's movie really didn't.
No, having just rewatched it, they don't really get the closest is like you really get that, if anything, at the very end when you see the picture of him and you realize like he's always somehow been there, like the guy says, you've always been the character.
He got sucked in. Yeah.
But so I just watched the miniseries because I was like, I'm not gonna have time to listen to the book or make time or whatever. But I was curious about the miniseries. I thought this would be a good time to watch it. But I was especially interested because the DVD that exists, so this is made in 1997. It's got commentary from Stephen King, from the director Mick Garris, who also did the Stand miniseries. And various other people involved in it, and for each of the 3 parts. And so it's like this.
Wow.
It's a 3-part. So it's like each of them was 90 minutes. So it's this, a really long telling that was written by King. So like this is his version of his book. After The Stand was so successful, I guess they're like, "What do you want to know?" He's like, "Well, I've always wanted to do The Shining," and so they were able to get some crazy shit on TV. It feels like a TV movie. I'll say that. But anyway, I bring it up because that was so fresh for me. I feel like it was almost, that was how I was able to recognize the things that I knew were not from Dr. Sleep necessarily. Yeah. That was how I was able to realize like, oh, they are taking this stuff from somewhere else. But it's so some of the dialogue that I recognized from the miniseries was like in the boiler room, but now in Dr. Sleep. It was cool, and the Steven Weber part was actually a draw for me about the miniseries. His tour de force performance of it as an audiobook, and by the end, I will say like I thought the last like 20 minutes or whatever, he was incredible because he has all this makeup he's working with too as he really descends into madness. But so there's stuff in that movie where Tony, in Stephen King's adaptation of his own book, Tony is like an apparition that appears to Danny that is really rather cheesy. And I don't think this is in the book, but like he basically at the end has a scene where Danny is graduating from college or high school. I'm not sure which, maybe high school. And Tony, it's the same character as played. Tony is like, so basically realized that Tony, who's warning him to not go to the Overlook and all this stuff, is actually his grown-up self.
Gotcha.
And at the high school graduation, like his dad is there, looking not fucked up and like proud of him as a ghost, I guess, to where he's like, and I think I actually took a bunch of notes that I won't bust out, but I think one of the main I remember was for, I don't know if Stephen King said this or Mick Garris, the director, but something like in their mind is about the redemption of Jack Torrance,
right?
Which is not something that would ever even occur to me. But I feel like they kind of did that in the Dr. Sleep as well. We're trying to like redeem Jack Torrance and like not make him this axe wielding maniac, but rather this loving father who was struggling to maintain himself amidst the pull of those spirits in the Overlook and stuff. Anyway,
can we talk about some of the direct homages though to the original Shining that happened in there? Like, how about when right after he goes to AA, he meets the doctor from who also played Gerald from Gerald's Game.
Okay.
Because this guy likes to recycle his actors.
Yeah. Yeah, I recognize that character actor. I can't think of his name.
But the interview room, like his office where he's interviewing Danny Torrance, is identical to the interview room that Jack Torrance at the beginning of The Shining. Like it's set up exactly the same. The shots are the same. The windows behind him.
I caught that.
He even does those hand
really?
things that, he does a couple of them. Have you seen Room 237?
Yeah, a few years ago. I don't remember
the conspiracy theory documentary.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the things they pointed out. Like he keeps moving his hands and making these symbols that are like I don't know.
Mr. Ullman, the guy that or Jack Torrance in that scene.
In that scene, the guy who's interviewing Jack Torrance.
Yeah, his name is Ullman, which I always remembered because you never see. It was like Tracy Ullman and this guy. It's spelled like my name and everything. So it always stuck out to me. But yeah, I can picture that guy.
He puts his hands together in certain ways that are not natural. That they're arguably
kind of
not
picture
natural.
That,
yeah. And that guy did it. Like he just does a little brief one, and I'm just like, oh my gosh,
that's amazing.
Such a deep cut for for it to be in there. And
I didn't quite catch on to the nuances. I did not catch on to the nuances of that. For me, what it was, and I never would have guessed it was the same room or replicated. It was actually the shot on Ewan McGregor's character, because it's kind of so this was something I didn't realize till recently rewatching The Shining, because I thought it was something about my DVD, but like The Shining is not like a 2:3. It's not like a widescreen movie. It's a 4:3, like just square.
Yep.
Like that's how it was shot in 1980. And so, so the framing of certain things is a little bit different than it might be if it were a widescreen movie. And so for what it was about that scene for me was the framing of the shot on Ewan McGregor, because I hadn't yet rewatched The Shining. I rewatched it after seeing Dr. Sleep, the Kubrick movie. And it was that shot on him. I was like, that seems like an homage to the Shining. And then on the way home, we're reading it, and it was IMDb trivia, and it was basically everything you said, except for like they didn't catch on to the hand signals. You should contribute that to IMDb.
Yeah. Oh man.
But that kind of stuff was exciting. And then like when Rose the Hat is like walking up the stairs at him, she's doing like the same hand gestures as when Jack is coming up the stairs at Wendy.
Yep. And he's kind of like swinging the axe just a little bit, like she was
with the bat. Yeah.
And the drive up to the Overlook is the same shot as the drive from the opening credits of the thing.
Yes. I caught the vibe of that in the opening, but I didn't realize till.
But it's at night.
I think IMDb says it's the actual same footage, just treated digitally.
Oh,
because it's like
really?
They said they recreated a lot of things, but the blood and the pouring into the hallway, and a few of the shots leading up to the Overlook, they treated day for night and then added snow. Well, actually, maybe that's later when they go back to it, like at the end. That stuff was so exciting, though, to catch on to as a viewer. Like you're just like, ooh, yeah.
There was a ton of Stephen King references to the Tet. Like the bus lines are named Tet, and in the Dark Tower series, they form what's called the Tet Corporation.
Oh,
Lamurk Industries is one of the one of the companies that are a front for the Crimson King, who's the antagonist in the Dark Tower series.
Oh shit! Randall Flagg's not the antagonist.
He's the first lieutenant of the.
Oh
Crimson
shit!
King.
He's okay, wow.
Yeah, he's like second in command.
That's hard to imagine.
Yeah,
this Crimson King sounds like Satan himself, basically.
He is Satan himself.
Yeah,
he's Stephen King's version of Satan.
Wow.
And then the second time you see Dick Halloran, when he comes to the hospice and Danny goes to talk to him, one of the first words out of his mouth are like, "Ka is a wheel." And that's a direct line from the Dark Tower series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So that stuff would not have been in Dr. Sleep. Certainly not the Dick Halloran part, right?
No, I don't think so. No, and not calling the bus lines the Tet buses or anything like that. Of course, there are Dark Tower references in all of his books, but nothing that blatant like that. I really love they really nailed the vibe too with using the actors and actresses that looked just enough like Shelley Duvall and like Jack Nicholson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which was Henry Thomas, like from E.T. Like little kid, little, is his name Elliot in E.T.? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that.
I don't think I would have known that had I not seen him in Haunting of Hill House as someone this age.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm sure, partially the relationship he has that led to this. But yeah. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to see, because like in the preview you see like the riding the big wheel and stuff, and I figured they would just show stuff like that but never faces. So I was really surprised to see those scenes initially. But yeah, I thought they're very serviceable. Yeah, so cool to see like so many of the shot recreations as Danny goes through the Overlook, like basically mirroring the stuff with his dad. Yeah.
And I love that the aged Overlook, like they did, it looked great. Like it looked, and his typewriter was still there, and
right.
all of it.
And I was just remembering, when I watched the miniseries, miniseries, like I'm not sure how well I recommend that. I recommend it as a curiosity. And the commentaries are actually super interesting to hear Stephen King talk about the challenges of adapting for television miniseries. And there's a lot of just interesting information that comes out because there's such a long period of time over which they're talking. But one of the particularly interesting things about it is it's shot at the place, at the actual hotel that Stephen King stopped at that gave him the idea for The Shining.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's right set on so when you see like the Rocky Mountains and stuff, it's not some sort of the projection or whatever that they'll often use in movies shot on sets for whatever's outside. It's the actual Rocky Mountains and stuff. So that stuff was rather neat to see. And on the flip side, I was surprised in digging into The Shining a little more for the first time in a long time that wasn't a real hotel. That was all built. So I guess they would have had to rebuild it, but God, it was perfect. I mean, like, you got to get like the right lens. So like the set has to be perfect. You got to get the same lens, the same distance from the science of that is so remarkable what they did to recreate those things. And like the stuff, like you may not recognize all of it, but you just kind of like catch on to what they're doing. Like I hadn't seen The Shining in years or whatever, but I was catching that stuff in a satisfying way. And then now to hear like what you're saying about the hand gestures, I can only imagine the details.
I am sure there's just so much that make it into the Stephen King universe, and then on top of all of that stuff, it was thoroughly enjoyable as a movie.
Yeah.
Like, just like you were saying, perfectly cast, perfectly performed. The beats were good. It just was totally watchable and just a good movie.
Yeah, and it gets into like an adventure at a certain point where like the adult Danny teams up with this super powerful kid Abra to like go after Rose the Hat and the True Knot to stop them, basically doing what they're doing. And Abra's like this like little superhero in a way because of her powers are so intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just it was a fun movie. It was a touching movie. It wasn't really scary. Oh, the really most horrific thing I would say was the torturing and killing
of the kid. Yeah. Even the Shining stuff, like the ghosts from the Overlook.
Yeah.
Like even that stuff wasn't like the woman in the bathtub. The first time he hears her as a kid, like she followed him from the Overlook, and he hears the bathtub splash in the middle of the night, and he pisses himself, and like and the door swings open, and there's like it's dark behind the shower curtain, and like, is there someone back there? Is there not someone back there?
Right.
But then you see her, like, that was fucking terrifying. Like I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was scary. They did that perfect. But then just like another 180 when he finally knows the trick on how to fight him, when he goes into that bathroom and she's like grinning.
Oh yeah, at
he
the end, yeah.
And he has so much
yeah.
confidence in himself that he like turns his back on her while
Yeah,
he shuts the door.
That was exciting.
Oh
yeah.
man, is that
communicates
good.
so much too. Like he doesn't say anything. You just know that now he has the confidence and the he's going in there to just handle it.
Yep.
And then you see that with Abra at the end, right? Isn't that what they do? Like she goes into a bathroom or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Now she's haunted by maybe that same ghost, right, from 237.
Oh yeah,
maybe not her.
Totally could be. Yeah,
So
that's the same exact setup. I think the same exact thing happens.
Yeah,
and she does the same thing, like turns her back on the ghost, and because she knows what she needs to do. Oh man, I just remember it ended, and I'm just like, I did not even want to see this movie. Like I didn't even want to come to this movie, and I'm so entertained. I was so entertained by it. It was so good. Highly recommend it. Especially if you're a fan of The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. I don't know why you wouldn't be. That movie is so good.
Yeah.
Or a fan of the book. I don't know why you wouldn't be. That book is so good. Yeah, totally recommend it.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
It's nice to see something live up to a trailer.
Yes. Yeah, because I remember I shared that trailer and it's just the trailer of him riding the tricycle through the halls of the Overlook. And then you came back with they recreated all of that stuff except for the one like you found out really fast or you knew I
don't remember how, but
that they had actually recreated all that stuff, and that made it even better. And then it was just so good. Everybody brought their A game. Yeah, highly recommend it.
Yeah, me too. And the bride as well, who was also a skeptical audience. That was cool to see her come around and enjoy it so much. She said to me a few days after, though, or maybe it was even leading up, she's like, you realize the last 3 movies we've seen in the movie theater were It Chapter 2, The Joker, and Dr. Sleep.
That's the same movies I've seen in the last movies I've seen in the theater.
Can't we just see like a nice romantic comedy or something? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, invite me to a movie. I will go to it with you. But that's just how it's been.